While I was off at college, my parents drained my savings to buy my brother a new motorcycle. When I returned, Dad grinned, "Be proud you helped him." I chuckled, and he barked, "Why laughing?" His expression crashed when I said, "Because that account they stole from was." Can you imagine working your entire life, saving every single penny, only to wake up one day and find it all gone? And not just gone, but stolen by the very people who were supposed to protect you? This isn't just a story about money, it's about a betrayal so deep, it changed everything. My name's Tyler, and I was 20 that summer, fresh off my sophomore year of college. I thought coming home would be a break, a chance to relax, maybe reconnect with my family and make some extra cash at the diner I'd worked at since high school. Instead, I walked right into a nightmare that completely shattered how I saw my parents. Forever. See, I've always been the responsible one. My younger brother, Ryan, could do no wrong in their eyes, but me? I was expected to keep my head down, work hard, and never, ever complain. Since I was 16, I'd been meticulously stashing away every paycheck, every tip, every extra dollar I could earn into a savings account. By the time I left for college, that account was my pride and joy, my little security blanket. I wasn't like Ryan. I didn't splurge. I never begged my parents for money. I was building towards something real, an apartment, grad school, maybe even my first car. Every single penny in that account was mine, earned through sweat and late nights. Ryan, though, was a whole different universe. At 17, he was already spoiled beyond belief. Newest phone, designer sneakers, and my parents practically bent over backward to make sure he never felt deprived of anything. He never worked a part-time job, never saved a dime, and still always had money to burn. For years, I just shrugged it off. He's the baby of the family, you know? But deep down, it gnawed at me, especially when I thought about all those nights I was stuck waiting tables past midnight while Ryan was at home, probably just playing video games. The moment I got home that summer, I felt it. Something was off. Ryan was out in the driveway, revving a brand new motorbike, grinning like he'd won the lottery. The thing gleamed in the sunlight, sleek black with chrome edges, the kind of bike you don't just casually pick up. My first thought was, how on earth could my parents afford that? We weren't poor, but we definitely weren't the kind of family that could just drop that kind of cash. I went inside, dropped my bag, and asked my mom how he got it. She gave me this overly casual smile, almost too bright. "Oh, your father and I just helped him out. It was time he had something nice." My stomach twisted into knots, but I didn't push. Maybe they dipped into their own savings, or Dad had picked up over time. I tried to tell myself that. But then, later that night, when I logged into my banking app, the truth hit me like a physical blow. My balance. That number I always checked like a security blanket. It was completely drained. Every dollar I'd worked for. Gone. I sat there, staring at the screen, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. The withdrawals weren't subtle either. My dad had been systematically transferring money straight from my savings account into his checking account over the last few months, while I was away at school. Rage flooded me. I stormed into the living room where my dad was watching TV. My voice cracked when I finally managed to ask, "Where's my money?" He didn't even flinch. He just muted the television, turned to me with this smug little smirk, and said, "You should be proud to help your brother out. That motorbike is going to change his life." Proud? Proud that they had stolen from me? Proud that they thought Ryan's joyride was more important than the years I'd spent working late shifts and eating instant noodles just to save? I let out the short, sharp laugh, not because it was funny, but because the sheer audacity of his words was unbelievable. Dad's eyes narrowed. "What's so funny?" I looked him dead in the eye, my voice low but steady. "Because that account you took from was in my name only." The smirk vanished from his face for a split second, though he quickly covered it with his usual scowl. "Watch your tone, Tyler," he snapped. "We're your parents. We've supported you for 20 years. Don't act like you built that money all by yourself. We made you. We gave you a roof. We let you go to college. The least you can do is help your brother get a start in life. We let you go to college?" That word echoed in my head. As if I hadn't earned my scholarships, worked through every summer, and fought tooth and nail to cover everything that wasn't covered. As if college was some gift they could just dangle over me. I tried to reason, my hands still shaking. "Dad, that account was supposed to be my future, my money. You didn't even ask me. You just took it. That's theft." Ryan, who'd been eavesdropping in the doorway, snickered. "Oh, relax. You act like it's the end of the world. You'll make more money later. I need the bike now." He leaned casually against the doorframe, looking every bit the smug younger brother who'd just won some invisible war. Besides, it looks way better on me than a bunch of numbers in some account. That was the first time I truly felt something snap inside me. The line that had held back years of resentment, years of swallowing their blatant favoritism, pretending it didn't matter. My brother had my parents wrapped around his finger, and now he was literally riding around on the back of everything I had built for myself. My mom finally chimed in, her voice soft, but so incredibly patronizing, the way she always did when she tried to smooth things over. "Sweetheart, you'll understand one day. Ryan has been through a lot lately. He needs our support more than you do. You're strong. You can handle setbacks. He's fragile. You know how he gets when he doesn't have nice things. Do you really want him to feel left out?" I just stared at her, utterly floored. Fragile? This was the same kid who'd been babied his entire life, who never faced a consequence that didn't magically disappear when Dad stepped in. Fragile was the excuse they used every single time he messed up. Fragile was why Ryan had never had a job, never paid a bill, never learned the value of anything. "Mom," I said carefully, "you're telling me my years of saving don't matter because Ryan's feelings are more important than my future?" She sighed, as if I were the unreasonable one. "It's family. Family sacrifices for each other." But it didn't feel like family. It felt like I was a wallet with a pulse, and Ryan was the golden child who could do no wrong. Over the next few weeks, the situation only grew worse. Anytime I tried to bring it up, Dad would shut me down with the same rehearsed lines. "We know what's best for this family. Stop being selfish. We're your parents, you'll thank us later." Meanwhile, Ryan paraded around the neighborhood on his new bike, bragging to his friends that his parents bought it for him. I started noticing smaller things, too, little slights I hadn't fully clocked before. My room had been taken over while I was gone, half my stuff shoved into boxes so Ryan could store his gaming setup there. My mom accidentally gave away a couple of my old clothes, claiming she thought I'd grown out of them, even though I'd told her to leave them. Every meal conversation turned into some ridiculous way of praising Ryan, his style, his independence, his plans to maybe possibly get a job someday if he felt like it. And me? I was the ghost in my own house. The one who, when I tried to assert myself, was told I was being dramatic. When I asked about paying me back, Dad actually laughed in my face. "We don't owe you anything. You owe us." One night, Ryan came into my room while I was lying awake, scrolling through my empty account balance for the 100th time. He leaned against the door frame again, that same smug smirk plastered across his face. "You know, you should be grateful," he said casually. "Without me, what would you even have to complain about? You'd just be some boring college kid with no story to tell." He winked and walked out, his laugh echoing down the hallway. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about the money. It was about power. My parents had handed my brother a weapon, and he was enjoying every second of watching me suffer. And I knew then that if I didn't do something, if I didn't stand up for myself, this wouldn't be the last time they'd take from me. But the way I chose to stand up for myself, that would be the turning point none of them expected. The night things truly snapped was a Saturday in late June. I'd picked up a summer job, busting tables at a steakhouse across town, trying to scrape together whatever I could to start rebuilding. Every paycheck felt like a constant reminder of what I'd lost. But at least it was something. I'd been working double shifts, barely home, which was probably why I didn't notice what my parents and Ryan were up to until it was too late. I came home around midnight, exhausted, smelling like grease and dishwater, ready to collapse. But when I stepped into my room, I froze. My desk was gone. The laptop I'd saved for, the one I desperately needed for school, was missing. Half my textbooks and notebooks were stacked haphazardly in boxes, shoved against the wall like clutter. I stormed into the living room where Ryan was sprawled across the couch, game controller in hand, grinning. "Oh, hey," he said without even pausing his game. "Don't freak out, but I borrowed your laptop. Needed something better for my graphics. That old one of mine couldn't handle it." My stomach sank. "Borrowed?" I said slowly. "Where's my desk?" Dad looked up from his chair with that same irritating calm. "We moved it into Ryan's room. He needed more space for school and his hobbies. Don't worry, we'll figure something out for you before you go back to college." Heat rushed to my face. "That laptop isn't just for fun. It has my work, my papers, my research on it. You can't just..." Ryan cut me off with a laugh. "Relax. I'll give it back eventually. Maybe when I save up for something else. Until then, you can use the family desktop." "The family desktop?" The ancient, wheezing dinosaur in the corner of the living room that could barely load email, let alone handle the complex programs I needed for school. That was when the betrayal hit me full force. It wasn't just money anymore. It wasn't just favoritism or small slights. They had stripped away the tools I needed to succeed, the very things I had earned for myself, and handed them to Ryan like party favors. I remember looking at my mom, hoping, praying. For once, she'd stand up for me. But she just gave me that same soft, patronizing smile. Honey, it's just a computer. Don't be so dramatic. You can share. Isn't that what family does? I couldn't even speak. I just stood there, fists clenched, every word I wanted to say burning in my throat. Over the next week, the humiliation deepened. I'd come home from work to find Ryan sitting at my desk, my laptop open, greasy snack wrappers scattered across the keyboard. My files, my carefully organized folders, had been shoved aside so he could install games. One night, I caught him scrolling through my saved essays, laughing at the titles. You actually write this stuff? God, no wonder you're broke. Who cares about this garbage? I started locking the door to my room, but Dad just ripped the lock right off, saying, we don't keep secrets in this house. I tried moving my things into the garage, but Mom insisted the space was too cluttered and Ryan needed it for his bike gear. Every single attempt I made to carve out a space for myself was bulldozed under the excuse that Ryan needed it more. The final blow came the night I got my midsummer paycheck. I'd been watching my account like a hawk, making sure not a single cent went missing again. But when I logged in, my stomach dropped. The balance wasn't right. Not empty, but short by a few hundred. I called the bank immediately, and the representative explained in a careful voice that there had been an authorized user on the account. My father, he'd added himself months earlier without telling me. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. Of course, I added myself, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'm your father. Everything you have comes from us anyway. You think you can play at being independent while still under our roof? That money is family money. Don't forget who raised you. I remember Ryan grinning in the background, revving his motorbike keychain like it was some kind of trophy. Thanks for dinner last night, by the way, he added with a wink. On you, I guess. That was it. The moment the last bit of trust, of hope that maybe they'd see me as more than just a tool, shattered completely. I went to bed that night with my heart pounding, staring at the ceiling, realizing I was trapped in a house where my hard work wasn't just unappreciated. It was being stripped from me, piece by piece. And for the first time, instead of just feeling anger or despair, I felt something colder. Resolve. Because if they thought they could keep taking from me without consequence, they had no idea what was coming. The days that followed felt like living inside a slow, crushing weight. Every time I walked through the front door, I could feel my chest tighten, like the air itself carried judgment. My parents barely looked at me unless it was to scold me for attitude or to remind me how lucky I was to have a roof over my head. Ryan, on the other hand, strutted around the house like a king. He'd toss my laptop bag onto the couch when he came home from hanging out with friends, never bothering to ask if I needed it. He left crumbs and soda cans all over my desk. And when I pointed it out, Dad just said, "Don't nitpick your brother. He's got a lot on his plate." What exactly was on his plate? Playing video games, polishing his motorbike, and scrolling through my bank app to see how much money he could guilt my parents into taking next. He'd even wave his phone at me and say things like, "Maybe I'll borrow another 100. You don't mind, right? Family helps family." Always with that smug smile. Always knowing my parents would back him no matter what. I kept working long shifts at the steakhouse, sometimes until 2 a.m., dragging myself out of bed for another round the next day. I barely saw my friends anymore, too ashamed to explain why I couldn't hang out or why I always looked so drained. My coworkers noticed, though. One of them, a waitress named Kelly, pulled me aside during a break and asked, "Are you okay? You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders." I wanted to tell her everything. How my own parents had robbed me. How my brother paraded around on stolen money. How I felt invisible in my own home. But the words stuck in my throat. Admitting it out loud felt like it would make it even more real. So I just said, "Yeah, just tired." At home, things only got worse. One night, I came back late and found Ryan hosting half a dozen of his friends in the living room. My laptop was open on the coffee table, music blasting, greasy pizza boxes stacked on top of my textbooks. When I tried to grab my things, one of his buddies laughed. "Oh, this is yours?" Ryan said it was family property now. I froze, heat crawling up my neck, but Ryan just smirked. "Chill out, Tyler. Don't be such a control freak. You're always working anyway. You don't even use this stuff." I carried the pizza-stained textbooks back to my room in silence. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. For the first time, I thought, maybe I should just leave. But then the doubt crept in. Where would I go? I didn't have enough money for rent. Not after they drained my account. My car was barely holding together, and the thought of crashing on a friend's couch made me feel like a burden. I felt stuck, pinned between humiliation and helplessness. The lowest point came a week later. I had a huge paper due for a summer course I was taking online, something I needed to keep my scholarship in the fall. When I went to retrieve the file from my laptop, it was gone. Deleted. Hours of work, just gone. Ryan shrugged when I confronted him. Relax. I needed space for my games. Didn't think your stuff was important. I didn't even yell. I just walked back to my room, shut the door, and sat down on the edge of my bed. For the first time in years, I felt tears sting my eyes. Not just from anger, but from this deep, bone-deep exhaustion. I had nothing left. No money, no tools, no support. And the people who were supposed to have my back were the ones who'd pushed me down. That night, lying in the dark, I realized something. They wanted me weak. They wanted me to accept this role, the hardworking ghost who made sacrifices so Ryan could shine. But the longer I lay there, the more a different thought took root. What if I stopped playing their game? What if, instead of letting them drain me dry, I found a way to use what they'd taken against them? It wasn't clear yet, not fully, but the seed was planted. And as I quietly began writing down plans, tucking notes into the bottom of my backpack where no one would find them, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The shift didn't happen overnight. At first, it was small things. Changes so subtle my parents and Ryan didn't even notice. I started picking up every extra shift I could at the steakhouse, volunteering to cover for coworkers who needed nights off. It meant long hours, aching feet, and days where I practically lived on coffee. But it also meant that slowly, carefully, my paychecks began to grow. This time, I didn't put the money into the account my dad had access to. I marched into the bank one afternoon, exhausted from work but determined, and opened a brand new account in my own name. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't even tell my friends. The banker asked if I wanted to add a joint user, and I shook my head so hard it startled her. Just me, I said firmly. Only me. For the first time in months, I felt like I had taken back a little bit of control. Work was grueling, but oddly empowering. The more shifts I worked, the more I began to enjoy the independence of it. I didn't owe my parents an explanation. Every dollar was mine, untouched by their hands. And while Ryan bragged about his motorbike and loafed around, I quietly stacked paychecks in my hidden account. It was like having a secret weapon. One night, after a particularly busy dinner rush, the manager pulled me aside. "You've got a solid work ethic, Tyler," he said, looking impressed. "Most of the college kids flake out, but you show up. Keep this up, and there's room for you to move up here." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. For months, I'd been treated like a joke at home, like my hard work meant nothing. But here was someone actually recognizing it, rewarding it. That night, I went home tired, but with a small smile tugging at my lips. Meanwhile, I also began thinking long-term. At school, I had a part-time job lined up for the fall, plus a professor who'd hinted about an internship opening. If I could just hold on through the summer, I'd have not just money, but opportunities. My parents and Ryan might have stolen my savings, but they couldn't steal my drive. Still, I kept up the act. Quiet, compliant, even a little withdrawn. I let Dad lecture me, let Mom guilt me, let Ryan taunt me with his motorbike keys dangling in his hand. Inside, though, I was planning. Every cruel comment, every dollar they took, every book they treated like garbage, it was fuel. I wasn't going to lash out in some reckless burst of anger. No, I was going to be patient, methodical. It was during this period of quiet rebuilding that something unexpected happened. One of the regular customers at the steakhouse, a middle-aged guy who always ordered the same ribeye and coffee, struck up a conversation with me. He asked about school, and I admitted I was studying business. He smiled and said, "You've got the hustle for it. Reminds me of when I was your age." Turns out he owned a small logistics company and was looking for part-time help with data entry and filing. The pay was better than bussing tables, and it could lead to networking opportunities. I took the job. Suddenly, I had 2 streams of income, cash tips from the steakhouse and a steadier paycheck from the company. I worked myself ragged, but every time I logged into that secret account and watched the numbers climb, I felt stronger. By July, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. My laptop may have been hijacked by Ryan, but I scraped together enough from tips to buy a used one off a coworker. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and I guarded it like treasure. I worked on my coursework late into the night, applying for internships, updating my resume. And all the while, I played the role of the obedient older son at home, quietly listening as Dad praised Ryan's independence for learning how to clean his bike, or Mom cooed about how Ryan deserves nice things. They had no idea that while they were crowning him king of the house, I was out there building a future without them. The funniest part? Ryan started to get restless. A motorbike can only hold someone's attention for so long. And by August, he was already hinting at needing more. New gear, upgrades, maybe even a car next year. I listened to him whine at dinner about how unfair it was that he didn't have what he wanted yet. And I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one drowning. I was climbing. And soon enough, the tables would turn in ways none of them could even imagine. By late August, I had settled into a rhythm. One life at home, another life outside it. At home, I was still the quiet, overlooked son, letting Dad's lectures and Ryan's smug comments slide off me. But outside, I was slowly piecing together a version of myself that my family didn't even know existed. At the logistics company, the data entry job I'd started with began evolving. My boss, Mr. Green, noticed I had a knack for organization. I'd come in early to sort files, streamline spreadsheets, and catch small mistakes others missed. One Friday afternoon, he called me into his office. "You're sharp, Tyler," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I like people who don't just punch a clock, but think ahead." Ever considered project management? I didn't know what to say. No one had ever asked me that. What I considered. At home, everything was decided for me, dismissed as selfish or dramatic. Here, someone was asking me what I wanted. I'd like to, I admitted. He nodded. "Good. We've got some training modules. Stick around with us and you'll have real responsibilities by next year." That moment planted a seed. This wasn't just a summer job. It was a stepping stone into something bigger. If I played it right, I could build a career here, one my parents couldn't take away. Meanwhile, I was also learning practical things, useful things. Working at the logistics company gave me an inside look at contracts, supply chains, and financial records. I wasn't stealing information, but I was paying attention. I saw how businesses protected themselves with clauses, how they tracked every cent, how they kept detailed records so nothing slipped through. And I thought back to my own drained account, to Dad casually helping himself to money that wasn't his, to Ryan laughing at me like it was all some game. The difference was staggering. Out there in the real world, everything had to be accounted for. At home, my parents treated my savings like their personal piggy bank. And the more I saw that contrast, the more an idea began forming in the back of my mind. The second piece of my setup came through the steakhouse. By then, I wasn't working as many shifts there, but I'd built good relationships with the staff. The manager, a wiry guy named Carlos, trusted me enough to let me help with scheduling and balancing registers at the end of the night. I wasn't handling huge sums of money, but I was learning again the importance of paper trails, of keeping everything clean and recorded. I started keeping my own records, too. Quietly at night in my room, I began documenting every withdrawal from my old account, every unauthorized transaction my father had made, every instance where Ryan had taken something that was mine. I wasn't sure yet what I'd use it for, but I knew one thing: evidence had power. It was around this time that Ryan's greed tipped the balance in my favor. He started pushing my parents for more. New bike gear, a gaming chair, money to take a girl out. He framed it like he was maturing, like these things were needs rather than wants. And my parents, stretched thinner than they wanted to admit, began to look uneasy. I overheard late-night whispers in the kitchen about credit card bills, about how expensive supporting Ryan had become. That was when I realized I was standing at a crossroads. They had drained me dry once, and they'd do it again the second they found out I had money saved, unless I played this carefully. So, I doubled down on the act. At dinner, when Ryan bragged about needing new boots for his bike, I nodded and said nothing. When Dad complained about bills, I shrugged like I didn't have a penny to my name. I made myself small, invisible, harmless. Because the less they suspected, the more time I had to grow stronger. And behind the scenes, I kept building. My savings account grew. My boss gave me more responsibility. I quietly applied for scholarships and internships that could take me out of my parents' reach for good. Every step I took was like pulling a thread tighter, weaving a net that would eventually trap them in their own choices. By the time fall approached, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was positioned. For the first time, I had money they couldn't touch, skills they didn't know I had, and allies outside the house who respected me. And in the shadows of my own planning, I began to see the shape of something bigger forming. Because when the moment came to strike back, I didn't just want to stand up for myself. I wanted to make sure they could never use me like that again. The moment of truth came sooner than I expected. It was late September, just before I was set to head back to campus. The tension in the house had reached a boiling point. Ryan had started complaining nonstop that his motorbike needed upgrades, new exhaust, better tires, some custom paint job. And of course, he expected my parents to foot the bill. One evening at dinner, he leaned back in his chair, twirling his fork between his fingers. "So, Dad, I was thinking we could dip into Tyler's account again. He doesn't need it. I mean, he's already got scholarships, right? And he's living under your roof. It's only fair." I froze. Not because I was afraid they couldn't touch my new account, but because I realized Ryan still thought my money was his safety net. He had no idea I'd completely outgrown their grip. Dad cleared his throat. "That's not a bad idea, son. Tyler's been awfully quiet lately. He can afford to help out again." I felt something cold settle in my chest. This was it. The perfect chance. I put my fork down slowly, keeping my face as neutral as possible. "Actually, that's fine. Go ahead and check." Ryan's grin widened. "See? He finally gets it." After dinner, Dad logged into the old account from the family desktop. I leaned against the doorway, watching his smug confidence curdle into confusion. He clicked, refreshed, clicked again. Finally, he turned toward me, frowning. "Why is the balance still empty? Where's your paycheck money?" I shrugged. "What paycheck money?" Ryan piped up. "Don't play dumb. You've been working double shifts all summer. There should be something in there." I smiled faintly, just enough for them to see it. "Oh, I stopped using that account months ago. Opened a new one. In my name only. You don't have access." The silence that followed was heavy, almost comical. Ryan's face twisted in disbelief. "Wait, you mean you've been hiding money this whole time?" Dad's jaw clenched. "You ungrateful little," I cut him off, my voice calm but sharp. "Ungrateful? You stole from me. You didn't just take money. You took years of my work, my laptop, my future, and you expected me to keep letting it happen. So no, I'm not ungrateful. I'm done." For the first time, they didn't have a comeback. But that was only the opening move. The real revenge came a few days later. I'd been meticulously saving every record, bank statements, transaction logs, screenshots of transfers my dad made from my old account. I'd even noted dates and amounts of withdrawals that lined up perfectly with Ryan's motorbike purchase. I printed it all out, neatly organized in a folder, and walked it straight into the branch manager's office at the bank. I explained everything, how I was the sole account holder, how my father had added himself as an unauthorized user, how money had been siphoned off without my consent. The manager's expression darkened as he flipped through the pages. "This is serious," he said. "You could pursue legal action." And that's exactly what I set in motion. I didn't tell my family at first. I let them believe their intimidation still worked, that I was just sulking. Meanwhile, the bank launched an investigation, freezing the old account and flagging the transactions. The fallout started small. My dad tried to withdraw money one afternoon, only to be told the account was locked. I watched from the couch as he came home red-faced and muttering. Ryan asked if he could still get his upgrades, and Dad snapped at him for the first time in months. For me, it was like watching dominoes tip over in slow motion. Then came the letter. Official, sealed, and addressed to me. I opened it at the kitchen table while my parents watched. It explained that the bank had found my father's withdrawals unauthorized. They were offering to restore the stolen funds to me directly and advised that I could press charges for fraud if I wished. The color drained from Dad's face as I read it aloud. Ryan sputtered, "You can't. He's your father." I looked at him, calm and steady. A father protects his kids. He doesn't steal from them. That night, my mom tried to corner me in the hallway, tears in her eyes. "Tyler, please. You don't understand what this will do to our family. Can't you just forgive and forget?" But the thing was, I did understand. For the first time, I had the power. They treated me like nothing, like a bank account with a body, and now the tables had turned. And I wasn't about to waste the opportunity. I didn't sleep much the night after the letter came. For hours, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, weighing the choice in front of me. Part of me still carried that old instinct to back down, to swallow the pain, to keep the peace. But another part of me, the part that had worked double shifts, built a secret account, and learned how to survive without them, knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with the letter spread out in front of me. My dad walked in, his jaw tight, eyes red like he hadn't slept either. Ryan trailed behind him, quieter than usual, which was rare. My mom clutched a coffee mug like it was the only thing holding her together. Dad started in immediately. "Tyler, let's be reasonable. You don't need to make this ugly. We're family. Family works these things out." I let him finish, then calmly slid the folder of evidence across the table. "You didn't treat me like family when you drained my account. Or when you gave my laptop to Ryan. Or when you called me selfish for not letting you take more. You treated me like a resource. And now I'm done." Ryan scoffed, trying to bring back some of his usual bravado. "So what? You're going to throw Dad in jail? You'd ruin your own family over some money." I turned to him, meeting his eyes. "It's not just about money. It's about respect. Something none of you gave me. Actions have consequences. You taught me that lesson the hard way. When I formally filed the fraud complaint through the bank, it was like lighting a fuse. Investigators began asking questions, and Dad quickly realized how bad it looked. Unauthorized access. Transfers lining up perfectly with Ryan's motorbike purchase. Months of evidence neatly recorded by me. There was no spinning it as family sharing. The bank sided with me, restoring every stolen dollar into my private account. And as for Dad, he wasn't arrested. Not yet. But he was slapped with a fraud warning that would stain his record for years. His credit score took a nosedive, and the whispers in town weren't kind. Everyone knew my family. Suddenly, people started connecting the dots. Why Ryan had a flashy new bike while I was busting tables late into the night. The respect my father had always clung to in the community evaporated. The tension at home reached a breaking point. My mom begged me daily to undo this before it destroyed them, but I stood firm. Ryan raged, screaming about how unfair it was, how I had ruined everything for him. He stopped riding the bike around as proudly because now everyone who saw it knew it had been bought with stolen money. His friends stopped coming around, too. Nobody likes standing next to a sinking ship. As for me, I packed my bags early for school. I didn't wait for tearful apologies that never came. Before I left, I stood in the doorway of my old room, now cluttered with Ryan's junk, and looked at my parents one last time. "You wanted me to sacrifice for family," I said quietly. "But real family doesn't bleed one person dry so another can live large. You taught me that lesson better than anyone." Dad tried to speak, but his voice cracked, and for once, he had no words. Ryan glared, his fists clenched but powerless. Mom just wept into her hands. I turned, walked out to my car, and drove away with my restored savings and something far more important, my independence. Months later, as I sat in my off-campus apartment, working late on a project for my internship, I thought back to that night in the kitchen when Dad smirked and told me I should be proud to help Ryan. Now, it was me smirking. Because the account they had drained wasn't just my savings. It had been my first real lesson in power, and I had learned it well. So, what do you think? Was I too harsh? Or did they get exactly what they deserved? I really want to know what you would have done in my place. Let me know in the comments below.